episode 354. RAW 30 is now in the books. We saw legends appear, some reunions take place, tribal court championships were on the line, almost a steel cage match. And it was quite a wild episode of Monday Night Raw to celebrate 30 years. Right here, right now, 360 Wrestling Fanatic. And welcome everyone, wrestling fans, to 360 Wrestling Fanatic. Thank you for tuning in right here on Spreaker, wherever you are, all over the world. Thank you for listening. A round of an applause for everybody that is listening to this episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic right now. I appreciate you listening on Spreaker or YouTube or wherever else you can listen to podcasts. Thank you very much. And tonight was the night celebrating 30 years of Monday Night Raw. Raw is XXX, which was the logo. Raw is 30 tonight. Live from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the Wells Fargo Center. The commentators for tonight, Kevin Patrick and Corey Graves. It was announced earlier today that the first hour of Raw would air commercial free. So let's get into it. Let's talk about WWE RAW is 30. We start things off with the immortal Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart. And didn't go too well for the Hulkster. There was a few minor mic problems. I wouldn't say it was real terrible, but it did cut out a few times. When he was cutting his promo here, there was a production assistant from the back, came out, give him a new mic. But he didn't really say much anyway. And it was just a quick promo. And that was it. And then the intro for the night was the same video they played on SmackDown last Friday night with the theme song for Raw is 30, where I don't know who sings it, I don't know the name of the song, but it's like I've talked about on the podcast, the last episode. It was it's the cover for that old song Blue by Eiffel 65, I believe it was. And it's not exactly the same, but it sounds like that song anyway. Like I said, I have no idea who sings it or what the name of this song is. It could be called Blue as well. I don't know. I have no idea. But this isn't a music podcast. This is a pro wrestling podcast, so let's get to the pro wrestling. And we start things off with Tribal Court, which of course was changed, which was originally announced last week on Raw. We were going to have the Tribal Appreciation Ceremony. I believe that's what it's called, right? Where they announced that every generation of the bloodline would be there. And what I read earlier is that Alpha, Sika, and Rikishi were supposed to be there. But Alpha and Sika couldn't make it. It said Rikishi is sick, so change of plans. And at first, I was all disappointed by that, by seeing this whole court thing. I wasn't really sure how this would turn out, but I was pleasantly surprised by this opening segment. Paul Heyman mentions how the Philadelphia crowd there were chanting 3 letters that were important to him, but he says ECW is dead. And he even wishes that Sami Zayn was too. He talks about some of the things Sami Zayn has done. He says Sami Zayn is guilty as charged. Just real quick though, I don't think he meant it as that, since he just said ECW is dead. Of course, guilty as charged was an ECW pay-per-view, but I don't think that's really what he was referencing. I don't think he was referencing it, really. Just a coincidence, to be honest. And he had some evidence showing some videos where in the back a little while ago Sami Zayn was there with the Usos, and then Drew McIntyre attacked him, and then it showed Sami running away. And then War Games showed after the match was over, Sami celebrating. He didn't say thank you. And he even Zayn, it showed where he did the for life thing, and Paul Heyman talked about him and Owens, like, do you say being friends or brothers for life or something, and he didn't say, and he even mentioned the NWO here. And there was another clip. Sami Zayn, when they were in the ring doing one of the Bloodline promos where he accidentally bumped into Roman, and Heyman says Zayn assaulted Roman Reigns. And then Zayn gets on the mic and says he's hurt that Paul Heyman would say all that. He would say that he would accuse him of that hurt. But then Reigns gets the mic and says, you have so much ego, you won't fight for this. He is very upset at this point. He calls for Solo. And Solo goes up to Sami, starts to go for the Samoan spike. But then it is Jey Uso who speaks up, the one member of the Bloodline that was against Sami Zayn joining the Bloodline, is now sticking up for him. And he says no disrespect to Roman Reigns. And he prepared some videos as well. And we see Jay's videos that he prepared. of Sammy helping the bloodline, all the times where he helped Roman, helped the Usos get victories. And Jay says he is loyal to the family, and Roman says that Sammy is not guilty for now. And he tells Sammy to thank Jay. He says to tell him to finish up tonight, and then he does not want to see him until the Royal Rumble this Saturday. He tells him not to show up at any shows or anything. And then at the Royal Rumble will be the final test. And Sami Zayn and the Usos stay in the ring while Kevin Patrick and Corey Graves run down tonight's card for Raw is 30. And then we go back to the ring, and it is time for the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship match. Or, I take that back. I forgot. This one was just for the Raw Tag Team Championships. Those were actually the only titles on the line. The Judgment Day. Damian Priest and Dominic Mysterio. I guess they were still selling the injury of Finn Balor, maybe, and that's because Dominic was the one who was in the match when they actually won and earned the title shot in Tag Team Turmoil. They decided to have him and Damian Priest be the ones in the match. But they are the ones to face the Usos tonight. This one starts off good with a lot of action in it, and then at one point Finn Balor interferes and he is ejected from the match. And a little later on, Jimmy Uso on the floor, he is hurt, and the referee throws up the X, and we have some help for Jimmy Uso. They go to help him to the back, and then we see Adam Pearce, and he says if Jimmy cannot continue, they will have to forfeit the tag team championships. The crowd starts chanting Sammy at this point, and Sammy gets on the mic and he says he wants to take Jimmy Uso's place. He says Sammy Uso is good to go. So Adam Pearce says he did it for the Judgment Day and the Tag Team Turmoil, so he's going to do it for the Raw 30th anniversary. He allows Sammy to take Jimmy's place in the match. And now the match is back on. Sammy in control at first, but Damian Priest hits the south of heaven, but Sammy kicks out. And Rhea Ripley gets in the ring at one point, distracts Jay a little bit. Dominic Mysterio allowed to hit the 619, goes for the cover, but then Sammy breaks it up, and Sammy and Jay hit the 1D. Sammy pins Dominic at 14 minutes, 13 seconds to get the win for the bloodline and retain the undisputed tag team championships for the Usos. Really good match, I thought. I liked how they did with Jimmy Uso getting hurt on the floor and then had Sami Zayn take his place, the same way that the Judgment Day was able to get this title shot in the first place. I thought that was done well. Everybody involved in the match, not even just the wrestlers in the ring, but Finn Balor at ringside, Rhea Ripley at ringside, and then Sami Zayn, who would end up getting involved and being in the match. Everybody was just great in this match. I thought Dominic, this was a real good performance from him, in my opinion. So, great way for the first match on the 30th anniversary for Raw. And backstage, we see JBL and Baron Corbin, and they run into the Godfather. Of course, they are good friends, but then the Godfather says to JBL, "Who is this jabroni?" Talking about, or no, not jabroni. He's not The Rock, sorry. He said, "Who is this stooge?" And Corbin's a little upset by that. He says he is not on the list for... Let me just take a quick break here. If you heard Good Morning Wrestling Fans this morning, I talked about how I expected there to be a backstage poker game. And, yep, there was backstage poker. Not just one game, there was a few games going on, it looked like. I was hoping we wouldn't have this segment, but to be fair, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It wasn't as bad as some of the other poker segments that we have seen before. So I'm not really too upset about it. And now back to this backstage meeting. And JBL says he wants to see the owner, and it is his former tag team partner of the APA, Ron Simmons, aka Farouk. We see the old office door with the APA sign on it, just like the old days of the Attitude Era. Ron Simmons comes out and he says the same thing that the Godfather did. "Who's this stooge?" And JBL and Baron Corbin give Simmons and Godfather some money, and then they see his name all of a sudden on the list. And then they let him in. And then we go to break. And in the ring, we have L.A. Knight. And he talks a little bit about the Firefly Funhouse returning on SmackDown last Friday night. And he calls out any of the legends that are backstage there at Raw. And it is The Undertaker. At first we hear the gong, the Undertaker music. But then that stops. And all of a sudden, we hear the Kid Rock song, American Badass. And we're not going to get the Dead Man tonight. But instead, we get the American Badass Undertaker. Comes out on the motorcycle to Kid Rock. And enters the ring. LA Knight gets on the mic and he says he's going to give the Undertaker a pass. He mentioned something about something happening where he would take the Undertaker to the Undertaker or send the Undertaker to the Undertaker, something like that. And he goes to leave, and the lights go out again, but this time it is Bray Wyatt. And then we see Bray Wyatt appear with the lantern. He slowly comes forward towards LA Knight. LA Knight rolls into the ring, and so does Bray Wyatt. Undertaker tosses Knight into Bray Wyatt, who hits him with the Sister Abigail. Taker walks up to Bray Wyatt at this time, whispers something in his ear, and then he leaves. And backstage, we go back to the poker game. Medusa is there, and Diamond Dallas Page as well. Next up is the Raw Women's Championship match, Steel Cage match, Becky Lynch versus Bayley, or at least that was the match we were supposed to see at this time. But before the match could start, Damage Control members Dakota Kai and Io Sky attack Lynch on the floor, and then they throw her in to the cage, and they go in as well. They lock her in. It is a 3-on-1 attack inside the steel cage. And the officials and Adam Pearce come to ringside, and they get some cutters to open the door. And the match never gets started. That's it. But just a few minutes ago, I got a notification from the Ringside News app that said the reason this match was cut short from Raw was because the tribal court segment with the Bloodline went long. So unfortunately, that match had to get cut. Apparently, the match was supposed to go 2 segments, but that did not happen. I don't know what happened post-show just yet, but I was thinking, I didn't know at the time why they cut the match short, but I was thinking there might have been for some reason, because it seemed funny that they would have a cage and then just have it for maybe a minute or two over the ring, and then the match never even start. At the time, I didn't know about the Bloodline segment going long yet, but I was thinking maybe they could make it up to the crowd, and then after the show tonight, have a dark match, just like I talked about on Good Morning Wrestling Fans yesterday, the last time I saw Raw live in 2018, where they started the episode of Raw with the steel cage, and then after Raw went off the air, they had the post-show dark match, Steel Cage, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose. But I don't know what happened after Raw went off the air just yet. Who knows? And I'll get to that more about that in just a little bit when I talk about the main event a little later on. And next on Raw 30, we have DX make their way out. And like I have in my notes here, for some reason, Kurt Angle is with them. Have no idea why. Was definitely not expecting to see Kurt Angle out with DX. We have Triple H. We have Shawn Michaels. We have the Road Dogg, Jesse James, and X-Pac. And then there is the Olympic gold medalist, former WWE champion, WCW champion, TNA World Champion. Obviously, that was not mentioned tonight. But Kurt Angle is there with DX. And surprisingly, this worked out pretty well, actually. We have in the ring, BG James starts off with his usual, introduces himself, and then when he is about the usual part when he introduces Billy Gunn, who is now in AEW, he acts like he's going over to point towards Billy Gunn, but then he sees Kurt Angle there, and they act like they're surprised, like they didn't know Kurt Angle was there. Came down to the ring with him, but they ask what he's doing there, and Kurt says he always wanted to be a part of DX. And I have to say, surprisingly, I actually didn't mind this very much. I thought it was better than I expected it to be when I first saw DX come out and them have Kurt Angle with them. But it actually was not that bad. They are interrupted by Gunther and the rest of Imperium. Geyser says, "Shame on you for all that filth and nonsense." Gunther says they will kick them out of their ring. Talks about how they disrespect the sport. And Triple H gets in his face, but then he says he's retired. Shawn Michaels says he's too old. X-Pac says he has a bad case of something. I didn't quite catch what he said though. But whatever it is, he has a bad case of it. The Road Dogg also says no. And Triple H then says Kurt said he'd fight him. But Kurt doesn't want to either. And then we see Seth Rollins come out. And then Shawn Michaels brings up, or X-Pac, he brings up that if only there were another two guys to team with Seth Rollins. And then the Street Profits come out. They get in the ring. And then they need a special referee, or not special referee. I skipped ahead. Got ahead of myself here in my notes. But they do need somebody to come out here, maintain order, and put this together is Teddy Long, former SmackDown general manager. And of course, he makes Seth freaking Rollins and the Street Profits versus Imperium in a 6-man tag team match. Playa. And now is the part when they need a special referee. And DX goes to have kind of a huddle, discuss it a little bit. And Kurt Angle keeps trying to tell him he has an idea, but they just kind of brush him off and ignore him. And then finally, they decide to listen to him. And then he takes his shirt off. And he is wearing a red, white, and blue referee shirt. So now it's official. The Street Profits and Seth Rollins vs. Imperium with Kurt Angle as the special referee. And we go to a break. And then when we come back, we see that we have a special guest commentator as well for this match. WWE Hall of Famer Jerry the King Lawler, along with Kevin Patrick and Corey Graves, which Lawler, I'm going to say he's like he used to be, but he wasn't too bad tonight. At one point during this match, Rollins hits an angle slam. Of course, I'm sure that was a tribute to the special referee Kurt Angle. And then the finish sees Montez Ford with From the Heavens. And then Rollins gets the stomp to get the win for himself and the Street Profits at 13 minutes, 4 seconds. Not a bad match, I have to admit. I actually enjoyed it. And then backstage again, we see at the poker game, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and JBL and Corbin win DiBiase's money. And then guess who shows up? DiBiase's partner in Money Inc., IRS, Erwin R. Shyster. And he says JBL and Corbin have to pay taxes, so he takes all of it except $100 bill, which he gives to Corbin, and he says, "You earned it." And we see Ron Simmons, and you knew we were going to hear this. You can't get an appearance from Ron Simmons without him saying, "Damn." I probably didn't say that good enough, but who can say that as good as Ron Simmons? And backstage, we see Kathy Kelly with Bobby Lashley. He will be taking on Austin Theory for the United States Championship. And MVP comes up once again, offers his assistance, but Lashley says he wants to do it on his own. He says he did not need Lashley and Omos helping him to get the title shot. And then next up, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, and he changes up one of his famous sayings, "Diamonds are forever." So is Monday Night Raw. He also says WWE has given him the opportunity to see his daughter succeed all her goals. And then he brings out his daughter, the SmackDown Women's Champion, Charlotte Flair. And then she starts to cut a promo, and we see the Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair. She makes sure Raw is the greatest show on television. And then these two are interrupted by Sonya Deville. And Sonya says she wants to face the champion. So Charlotte comes up with the idea for her to face Bianca Belair, since she said she wanted to face the champion, and Bianca is the Raw Women's Champion. So we have this match. We go to a break at one point during the match, picture-in-picture. That's another thing I don't think I've mentioned yet, but there were a few times once the commercials started during the show, we had picture-in-picture. And Bianca Belair gets the win against Sonya Deville. And then we see Alexa Bliss on the Titantron. She says she does not need Bray Wyatt or Uncle Howdy. She will defeat Bianca Belair this Saturday at the Royal Rumble. And now we see The Miz upset, crying and complaining about not really being a part of the 30th anniversary of Monday Night Raw. And then we see Kevin Owens come out and interrupt him. And now it is time for the main event of the evening. The United States Championship on the line in a no disqualification match, which was just added earlier today. Austin Theory versus Bobby Lashley. And the match starts out pretty good. We go to a commercial break, picture-in-picture. We see them brawling on the outside. And at one time in this match, Lashley sets up a chair in the corner, throws Theory right into it. But then, when Theory is on the floor, he gets a fire extinguisher from the ring. And we go to another break. And then when we come back, there are two tables in the ring. Lashley puts Theory through one. And we get an appearance from Brock Lesnar, who originally costed Bobby Lashley the United States Championship. He comes out, hits Bobby Lashley with an F5, and one on Austin Theory as well, but then he puts Theory on top of Lashley, allowing him to get the pin, 14 minutes, 17 seconds. Still United States Champion Austin Theory. And I saw reports earlier in the day that there was a chance Brock Lesnar could show up, about him being in Philadelphia today. And then during that backstage segment with Bobby Lashley and MVP, I started thinking of something that might happen. And it didn't happen exactly the way I thought it would, but I actually did kind of see it coming, where Lesnar, since Lashley mentioned him, brought his name up in the interview, that they might have Lesnar come out, cost Lashley the match again, cost him the title again. But what I was thinking was that the look MVP had on his face when Lashley told him he did not want him helping him, he kind of had a look on his face, and when I saw that look, I started kind of thinking that they might have not only Brock Lesnar come out and cost Lashley this match, which is what happened, But I was also thinking that maybe MVP would come out too and join forces with Lesnar, since him being upset that Lashley didn't want his help. And I would think, since Lesnar does not have Heyman with him now, that maybe they would pair Lesnar and MVP together. That's what I thought was going to happen. Maybe that's just me. I don't know if I was the only one that expected that to happen or not. But like I said, Brock Lesnar once again costing Bobby Lashley the United States Championship. Austin Theory retaining. Pretty good main event. And I'm sure it's too late to make a match for Lesnar versus Lashley at the Royal Rumble, but I would not be surprised at all if this is a WrestleMania match. I don't see it happening at the Elimination Chamber, which is the premium live event in between the Rumble and Mania this year. So I think that this is going to go until WrestleMania, and we're going to see Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. But who knows, I could be wrong. So that was the 30th anniversary of Monday Night Raw. And I actually thought it was a great show. Just my opinion, I enjoyed the whole show, which is something I haven't said about an episode of Monday Night Raw in quite a while. In the 3-hour era, it is pretty rare when there's an episode of Raw that does not drag at all at any point. Even good episodes of Raw at times kind of have parts where they start to drag a little bit, like where you start to think to yourself, is this almost over yet? But then it's only halfway over. And this one was, it went by faster than I thought. Kind of like watching an episode of Dynamite on Wednesday nights, where it just flies by, doesn't slow down, doesn't drag. And I thought the matches that were on the show were good. The opening segment with the Bloodline, the Tribal Court thing, I actually enjoyed. That was pretty good. The things with the Legends, I thought all of them were, I'm not saying all of them were great, but they weren't bad. And the poker game, like I said, which on GMWF this morning I talked about how I didn't want to see that, because normally when they have a lot of these like backstage segments, the poker games, things like that, they're usually not that good. But this one I didn't mind. Not saying it was really great or that I loved it or anything, but wasn't bad. I didn't mind it. And again, just the whole show I actually enjoyed. So the 30th anniversary of Raw definitely gets a thumbs up from me. But what do you think, though? I want to know what the listeners of 360 Wrestling Fanatic thought of it. So leave a comment here on Spreaker or YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought of Raw is 30. Also, if you want, leave an email, 360wrestlingpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know. I want to know your opinion on this big episode of Monday Night Raw tonight. Also, earlier today, I did get a notification from the Ringside News app that some of the talent would not be able to make Raw in Philadelphia tonight. And for some reason, I didn't read the article, I just saw the notification. But I did notice that the Bella Twins, who were advertised for the show tonight, did not appear. And as far as the legends go, that was it. That the ones that were, I believe anyway, the ones that were advertised that did not show up there or were on the show. And of course he was not advertised, but no, The Rock did not show up. But still, very good show. And also, I'm going to talk about a new shirt that is now available on ProWrestlingTees.com. And it's a special Memorial Jay Briscoe t-shirt. And 100% of the proceeds will be going to the Pugh family. And definitely a very good cause. It's a nice shirt too. I bought it today, and hopefully Pro Wrestling Tees will sell a lot of these shirts. They did the same thing a few years ago when Brody Lee passed away. They had the shirt where the money would go to help his family. And so hopefully a lot of people will order the shirt. It's available at ProWrestlingTees.com right now in the Ring of Honor section, but all you have to do though is go ProWrestlingTees.com. It's on the front page, shows up right away. Definitely a shirt worth ordering. Also, speaking of Pro Wrestling Tees, just got the January Pro Wrestling crate in the mail today. So that means the 360 unboxing is now available on both of the 360 Wrestling Podcast YouTube channels. If you can, check that video out, or listen to the audio version, or listen and watch both of them. Help support 360 Wrestling Podcast. It's very much appreciated. So that's all for this episode of 360 Wrestling Fanatic tonight, episode 354. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, stay tuned right here on this feed for more episodes of 360 Wrestling Fanatic. And be back tomorrow morning for Good Morning Wrestling fans to start off your day with me talking pro wrestling to you. Great way to start the day, right? And till next time, I am Lance, and I am a wrestling fanatic.